Welcome to Hindsight, the podcast, where bold stories and honest reflections meet real growth. I'm Lee Jones, your host, and every week I sit down with incredible people who turn life's turning points into powerful transformations. And if you're navigating change or chasing purpose, then you're in the right place. So this is the podcast, and what I like to do before we truly get started is ask a question. And it's usually 3 questions, but today I'm just going to ask 1 question because I don't want to hit you up too hard right at the beginning.
Thank you.
But here it is. She said, thank you. It's super simple, though. What are you doing today that the future you will thank you for? Now, we can either answer that right now, or we can answer it at the end of the podcast, however you like to do it.
I have an answer now.
Go. I love it. What you got?
My future me will thank me for finally starting to exercise 5 days a week.
Oh, man. So I get up and I do walk. But I got this incumbent bike that's just sitting there right next to the bed. So all I got to do is roll out the bed and get on the bike. And I won't do it.
I have like a whole mini gym downstairs, treadmill, bikes, everything. No, I hate it.
I tried to get as close and as right stage right in front of the TV, just no excuses, and I still have excuses. So that is a great bit of advice. Get in there. Being in the Army, fitness was a big thing, and we used to have the 3 different phases. And right now I find myself in my later years in life, not really later, but somewhere in the middle, in the maintenance phase, and just being at this time now where I can maintain a level of fitness so that as you progress and get older, it's not as difficult to get into it. Because, if you're starting and you're 70, like it's hard. You starting and you're 20, it's hard, right? So imagine when you're 70 or 80 or whatever, and you're trying to start this fitness routine. So doing it right now, excellent bit of advice.
And I'm not, okay, I'm over 60 and I'm not out there doing, like high intensity training or spin cycle classes, but I'm either walking, golfing, skiing. I'm moving 5 times a week.
When you look back in hindsight, everything is 20/20. In hindsight, we make mistakes, we're learning from it. In hindsight, yesterday and your tomorrow. In hindsight, is so much clearer now.
What if losing your job was the best thing that ever happened to you? And for Liz Steblay?
Yes, sir.
I always do that. I always play around with people's names. I knew how to pronounce it, but I just wanted to play around right now and act. I told you drink coffee. We just be ourselves on here, right? But for Liz Steblay, being laid off wasn't a setback. It was the start of a thriving career as a solopreneur. As the founder of Proco Agency and Professional Independent Consultants of America, PICA, I think you got it right in the background, Liz has spent years helping professionals transition into independent consulting. In this episode, we'll dive into the 6 keys to succeeding as a solopreneur, hopefully, navigating self-employment and building a business on your own terms. Welcome to Hindsight, the podcast. I'm Lee Jones, your host. Liz.
Hello, and I'm very happy to be here. So, yes, it's true. I got laid off from a job 20 years ago, and I fell into being self-employed and never looked back.
All right, hold on, Liz. Hold on 1 second, Liz. I think I just did some, what is it called when I say something to you mentally, mental telepathy?
Yes,
because I was supposed to say, Liz, and you went right into it. Here's what I was going to say. Liz, can you take us back to the moment you were laid off? What was going through your mind, and how did you turn that challenge into an opportunity? I never got to that, and you started talking about it. No, that's awesome. We got that synergy going already, so I appreciate it.
You gave me a little pause, and I jumped right in.
I love it.
So, yes. So this was over 20 years ago now. I was working for a Fortune 500 company. And yes, found out that we were going through layoffs, And I didn't even think about it very much. I mean, I kind of knew that maybe it was going to be coming, so it, it wasn't like completely out of the blue. We knew that there were some financial difficulties, and I I remember very clearly sitting in my office, and I called a colleague who actually
Mm-hmm.
was a former client, because prior to that Fortune 500 job, I had worked in consulting for nearly 5 years for a global company, and I'd kept in touch with people that I'd met along the way. So I picked up the phone, I called this guy, Rob, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I just got laid off. I, do you have any projects that you need any help with?" And he said, "Are you kidding? How soon can you get here?" And I literally had my first client before I even had a laptop. I went down there, I met with him the following week. He says, "Which of these projects do you think would be the right fit?" And I said, "Well, why don't we start with this project A?" And he says, "Great. Can you, how soon can you start?" I'm like, "I need to at least get a laptop first."
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
when I say I fell into it, I literally fell into it. I didn't really give it any forethought or planning or strategy or anything. There was no business
Mm,
plan. And
okay.
that's also the same year that I got divorced and became a single mom. But still, that first year I made more money, worked fewer hours, didn't have to deal with any big firm BS, and had more quality time with my kid. And I said, "That's it. I'm not going back to a regular traditional job. I'll figure this out."
Wow. Wow. To me, I mean, right now you summed it up very cleanly and nicely. Sounds like a rough year.
Yeah, it
Sounds
was
like a
a
rough
very
year to
big
me.
year.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So mentally, how did you, because well, thankfully you fell into that opportunity and you had a client,
Yes,
right?
the first one was
And
easy. The second one was hard.
the second one was hard. Okay. So really quick before we even jump into that, what's a solopreneur, first of all?
Yeah, so I fell into being self-employed before the word was ever even invented. Uh,
Yeah.
like the word entrepreneur, it's a person who is in business for themselves. Although, as the word solo implies, you're literally by yourself. This means that you're doing your own work. You're doing work you enjoy. You really do not have ambitions or any desire to grow, to be larger than just you, or to have employees. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't that you don't have people on your team. I have lots of
Right.
people that support me, but they're not employees, and they're all part time, and they all have other clients as well. So usually solopreneurs are people like independent consultants, financial planners, executive coaches, people who have knowledge or certain expertise. We're not necessarily people making widgets, because that usually implies a lot more overhead and employees.
Yeah.
So that's my definition of
Yeah.
solopreneur.
Okay, I like it. I like it. Now, you mentioned your first client was cool. It worked out nicely. Your second one was a little more difficult. So, what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned in those early days?
Yes, one of the biggest lessons, which is now, of course, one of the keys in my book, is don't get caught flat-footed. Meaning you need to
Mm,
always be doing business development. And this is one of the biggest things that people are afraid of about being self-employed is, "I don't know how to do sales. I don't know how to do business development." And neither do I. And I've been successfully self-employed for over 20 years. And I swear to this day, I've never done sales. It's more about keeping your network warm and being thoughtful and keeping in touch with people, keeping your name out there, because
yeah.
people need to be aware that you offer this expertise, and you have to build a reputation, and they need to be able to think of you when that need for your service or expertise pops up. So in my book, I talk about figuring out what your tagline is, or finding out what your keywords are. What are the keywords that are going to make you memorable? So in my case, I used to do organizational change strategy and implementation on big, hairy technology implementations, like on a global scale for like
Hmm,
Hewlett
hmm.
Packard and humongous companies. And so I I had one particular client, a high tech client down in Silicon Valley, and I ended up doing, I think, 12 projects for them over the years. And after about the fifth one, I realized that my first client, Sally, was responsible for me getting called into all these other projects. And I said, "Sally, I love you. This is terrific. Just out of curiosity, how how do you even make these introductions? How does this even happen?" And she says, "Oh, it's super easy. I'm in a staff meeting or a steering committee meeting or something, and I hear the words big, hairy change. And I said that, and she says, so whenever I hear the words big, hairy, I think of you. I'm like, oh, thanks. That's very flattering. But because I'm neither big nor hairy, but it worked.
Yeah.
Those were my key words. And so that's probably one of the hardest things, particularly if you're an independent consultant, is figuring out what is the tip of your spear, what is that niche, what are those keywords that are going to make you memorable to pop into people's minds.
That is a great lesson. That is a great bit of advice, strategy, career hack, whatever it is. Because I was going to ask you. Go ahead.
I was going to say, even if it's just 1 hour a week, I have a place marker on my calendar every Monday, 9 to 10, says do outreach, because I never want to be caught flat-footed again.
I like that. So do outreach, 1 hour a week. What does that, give me an example of that.
Yes. So I call it outreach. I don't even call it business development, right? Because business development sounds hard and boring. So I call it outreach. And basically that just means keeping in touch with somebody. So I keep a birthday list. So whenever I come across somebody's birthday, I write it down. And that's a great reason to reach out to somebody. I follow work anniversaries on LinkedIn. Or if I come across an article of interest. So I have a client who's very into team effectiveness. Everything they do at Electronic Arts is related to teams, because all of their games are done by teams. So he's an expert on teams. So if I ever come across a new article or research on team effectiveness, I send it to him. I just say, hey, Joe, thinking of you. I know this is your thing. Whatever that little touch point is, it's enough for the person to remember, like, oh, yeah, that's Liz, and she runs this company. So it doesn't need to be onerous or difficult or salesy. In fact, a lot of times I'll just send a quick note and I'll say, hey, just thinking of you. I know we're all busy. No need to reply. Now, it doesn't get any less salesy than that when I say no need to reply.
That is dope. That is dope. So do you put keyword? So that you just gave me that message and you just want people to keep your name in their heads, right? But do you put those keywords, or do you say any buzzwords, the hairy,
big hairy. If you have any big hairy changes, let me know. Personally, I don't do that work anymore. Now my first company, Proco, has people that does that work, or that do that work. So no, actually, no. It's more about one of my favorite blog articles. I've written over close to 90 of them now, but one of my favorite ones is called Business Development Equals Relationship Development.
I like that.
And so it's more about building a relationship, and so I don't worry about getting my keywords in there or whatever, or if it's via email, my tagline's in my footer, so there's no need to belabor the point.
Got it. I like it. All right. That's key lessons. It's one of the things that I hesitate, or I shouldn't say I hesitate with, I fail with doing it. I don't think I stay connected enough.
It's one of those things where we all say, I should be doing this. I should be exercising every day. I should
there
be
you go.
less
That's
caffeine.
2 for me, right? That's 2 for me, maybe 3 with the caffeine in about an hour or two.
I should be keeping better and should be doing more networking. Yeah. So there's no, it's not about the should. Actually, once you start it and you realize, oh, it's kind of nice to keep in touch with these people.
Right. Yeah. No, I try to go in and I do make it a point, especially on LinkedIn, to definitely, if someone has a work anniversary, hey, congratulations. So I do those type of things.
Yes, but don't just hit the button that is the predefined text.
No, I don't.
Something
I do
personal.
not.
Yes.
I do not, because like you, I'm always preaching the relationship part. You know what I mean? So I don't want it to come off as bull crappy, or everyone can do this, or check off the box, right? I want you to understand. So I like it. All right. So let's jump into another one. Many people dream of being their own boss, right? But they hesitate to take the leap. What mindset shifts are necessary to succeed as an independent consultant?
So, yes, actually, this is the first key in the book. It's be prepared to vanquish FUD. And FUD is an acronym that stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I always think of I call it the FUD monster. I imagine this little creature that sits on my shoulder and whispers in my ear, who are you to leave a full-time job? What are you, nuts to give up a full-time salary? And what about health insurance? And you don't know how to do sales and business development. Oh my God, you can't do that. And you don't know how to negotiate a contract. And how will you figure out how to negotiate your rate? You're terrible at negotiation. So all of that negative self-talk, which is part of our DNA. I mean, it's there to protect
Survival.
us. Usually from a charging lion, not from taking the leap to self-employment. That's not nearly as scary. So there are some tactics in the book for how to vanquish FUD and shrink it down to size. One of my favorite is name it and tame it. If you can slow those thoughts down and even grab one of them, and let's say it's about, well, you don't know how to do sales. All right. But I just heard this person say that I don't need to do sales. It's about business development, and business development is relationship development. And I know how to do relationship development. So it's not that scary. Or if you can, let's say, well, you don't know how to negotiate contracts. Okay, well, that's a doubt. So how can I learn more about that so that I'm more confident? So but it's a lot of it has to do with slowing down your thoughts so you can dissect it. But you asked me for the particular mindset shift. So it's not just about overcoming FUD. The mindset shift is to know that you're smart enough to figure out what you don't know. Because really, before you make the leap, you're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. This is all new. I don't know how to do anything. But if you're smart enough to figure it out one step at a time, you can do it. And that's why I wrote the book, right? All the steps are in the book.
All right. I don't know if I should answer this question, but I'm going to answer this question because I don't want you to give me everything. But your book does outline those 6 keys of succeeding as a solopreneur.
Yes, sir.
And you walked us through one, but can you walk us through the 6 keys and why each element is essential?
Oh, well, not in this short of a podcast, right? Because it's a whole book, and it's not, granted, it's not a big book, but there's a lot in there. Okay, so we talked about be prepared to vanquish FUD, and the second key is, we did talk about this too, is to be known for something and be memorable. What are your key words? What are your niche? A lot of people think that they should go to market or market themselves as a jack of all trades or a Jill of all skills, because then they'll be available for more work. But you need to put yourself in your client's shoes. They want to hire an expert. They don't want to hire a jack of all trades. So this is one of the most difficult parts, is figuring out, what is my niche? What do I want to be known for? Because I can do a lot of things, but what do I do particularly well, and what lights me up, and where do I know I can really knock it out of the park? And is it something people are willing to pay for? Because you might be the best person at underwater basket weaving, but there's no market for people like that. So you have to figure that part out. And we already talked about the third key too, which is grow and nourish your network. Right?
Yeah.
Always be like Johnny Appleseed, always planting seeds out there, because you never know which one's gonna grow and bear fruit. So without even thinking about it, we've already covered the first 3 at the beginning of this podcast.
So that's pretty awesome. All right, so I appreciate that. We want to make sure everyone goes out and gets the book. First of all, read it, get all the insights from it. But now we want to get into something that you can really help us with. What are some of the more common mistakes that new solopreneurs make, and how can they avoid those mistakes? At least one.
I wish it's almost as if I had scripted these questions for you, because this is perfect. This is the perfect next question, because the biggest mistake I see people make is another one of the keys. They don't charge what they're worth. They undercharge. And just don't do that, people. So there's different ways to charge. I go through all of them in the book, everything from fixed fee to hourly pricing to hybrid pricing, et cetera. When does it make sense to switch from one to the other? But most people start charging by the hour, unless it's an executive coach, then they're going to do packages, but it's all going to come back to an hourly rate. How much money do I need to make this to make a living, right? To make this viable. And the simple formula is there's roughly 2,000 working hours in a year. And you take your old salary and bonus, the last time you were a full-time employee, you divide by 2,000, you're like, oh, well, that's what I should charge. But no, that number is going to be anywhere from 30 to 50% too low. And this is the reason why. You need to add an uplift to whatever that number is, because you have to pay your own health insurance. You have to pay your own you have to pay self-employment tax. You have to pay for your own business insurance. You have to cover the hours that you're not billing, meaning the hours that you are doing your business development or outreach, or that you're doing accounting, or you're doing your marketing, or whatever it is that you're doing. You have to cover those hours too, and you have to cover your own vacation time. There's lots of things that go into running a business. That's why you need to charge more. So that's probably the biggest mistake I see people make, is they don't charge enough.
So really quick, in your book, does it talk about how do you kind of evaluate and calculate those additional uplift costs and
Yes.
apply it?
Yes,
It does.
absolutely. And there's one of my favorite tricks, which I'll just share now because I love this. This is like one of the most brilliant things, I think, because it worked brilliantly for me for 15 years when I was doing my own consulting work. Now I run 2 companies, so I'm not actively consulting, but it's based on the psychology principle called the center stage effect. If you give somebody a choice, 3, 5, whatever, how many choices, they're going to gravitate towards the center stage, towards the middle. So when you're quoting a rate, let's say you were going to quote a rate by the hour, and somebody says, so, what, you sound like the right person for me. How much do you charge? Well, first thing is try not to quote a rate in the meeting at all, because there's lots of factors to consider when you're quoting a rate, like what's the client's sense of urgency? What industry are they in? But anyway, if they press you and you have to say something in the meeting, give them a range. So I used to say, well, my rate ranges from $185 to $225 an hour based on the scope, duration, and complexity of the work. Let me put together a proposal. We've talked about a lot today. I'll put together a sample budget for you. I'll get back to you within a couple of days. Let's set up meeting up for 3 days from now so we can walk through it. Never once in 15 years did anybody go to the lower end of that range. Not once. Yeah. So the rate I really wanted to get, which I thought was fair, was $200 an hour. 9 times out of 10, I got $200 an hour.
I used to do a photography business. And I was taught, I guess, that same philosophy. Only give 3 options, and have the middle one be your ideal cost. You know what I mean? So yeah, okay, it works everywhere.
When you buy anything on the web, like I was looking at, I don't know what it was, a Zoom package yesterday or an email package, whatever, and there were 3 or 4 choices, and one said recommended, and it was the one in the middle. So do it with your own pricing too.
Yeah, I like it. All right, that's a good one. All right, she's putting out some nuggets, some gems on here today. So I thank you, Liz, for that. Now, building wealth as a solopreneur is different from a traditional career, right?
Yes.
So what strategies do you recommend for financial stability and long-term success? You gave a few already, but does that resonate? Is there anything else besides charging correctly and putting your name out there?
Keep more of what you earn. That's the biggest part. And there's a couple of different ways to do this. And those are, actually, that's key number 6, which is to pay less tax to keep more of what you earn. And there's some specific strategies in there for doing that. And there's ways to do this as a business owner that are much more, can be much more lucrative than as an employee. And it has to, I'm not going to get into all the details now because obviously it's in the book, but 2 important things. One, you want to be paid on a 1099 business to business basis. So when you line up work, this is a complicated subject, but corporations can pay you on a temporary W-2 basis, usually through a third party, or as a business to business. You want to be paid on a 1099 business to business so that on your tax return, you can do 2 things. One is you can take standard business owner tax deductions, because that starts to lower your effective tax rate. And the most important thing is you can contribute to your own retirement account, either a solo 401k, SEP IRA. There's lots of different options. And those contribution limits are much, much higher than a standard 401k in a corporation. And that's how you start to lower your effective tax rate and build wealth for the future. But still, okay, that sounds great. But how do you have the money available? So here's another nugget for you. So the first year that I was self-employed, I didn't have enough money to pay my quarterly tax. Snuck up on me. I did think about quarterly taxes. I'm like, oh, shoot, I owe $10,000. I don't have the money. I think I borrowed the money from my brother, but I said, okay, I'm never going to get caught like this again. So I started putting 40% of every invoice that was paid into a separate bank. Not my normal bank, because I have no fiscal discipline. If I log into my bank and I see I have $8,000 in savings, I'm like, woohoo, let's go on vacation. So I had to hide the money from myself. So a different bank. And then when it was time for quarterly tax, I transfer the needed money to my checking account. Fine. But then this is where the magic came in. When I did my annual tax return, I'd have anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000 left over. That's what went into my retirement account. And that's how I started getting my effective tax rate lower, lower, lower. At one point, I think it was even into single digits, because I was paying myself and my future self before I was paying Uncle Sam.
Hey, there it is. That's another way your future self is thanking you.
Oh, yes, very much so.
All right. So many solopreneurs struggle with finding client. What's the best advice for landing high quality clients and sustaining a steady pipeline of work? You gave some examples already. But one is having a great friend or a great client who advocates for you, right?
Yes.
Who markets for you. But what's another way to find those good clients?
Well, going back to the friend that advocated for me, I think it was Simon Sinek, but I might get this wrong. But people remember what it's like to work with you, how you make them feel, not just what you do, but how you make them feel when you do it. So it's not just about getting in and doing the work, whether you're coaching somebody or you're doing a consulting project, whatever the case is, or a financial plan for somebody, but how do you make them feel in that process? And after that process, check in with them in 3 months. So how is it going? Has the dust settled? Are you on track? Right? Don't just finish the work and then move on. Keep that relationship warm too, because they're more likely to refer you to somebody else than somebody new. So check in with them. Like, put it in your calendar every 3 months or so, and then maybe you spread it out to 4 months or 5 months, and not as often as time goes on. But when you're first starting out too, it is difficult to build that momentum, because your level of awareness and your brand marketing isn't out there yet, right? You're still building momentum. So subcontracting is a really good option when you're just starting out. But the problem with subcontracting is that if you're going to go through a firm or an online platform, they take a cut of what you make, anywhere from 25% to 50%. So you have to do the math. Like in the type of work that I used to do. In fact, remember 10 minutes ago when I said that the second client was hard, I was caught flat-footed. That project was ending and I didn't have anything else lined up. And by this point, I'm a single mom and I'm thinking, oh, shoot, I need work. And so I went and I talked to some boutique agencies in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I discovered that they were going to take 35% of whatever the client paid. And this was their fee for finding the client and, quote unquote, managing the relationship with the client, doing the invoicing and all this stuff. Right. And I ran the numbers and I thought, okay, my typical project's going to be 9 months long. It's usually full-time work. Holy smokes, they're going to make $45,000 just for introducing me to a client. I'm not willing to give up $45,000 because I want to keep more of what I earn. And I said, I called them the next day and I declined. I said, listen, I ran the numbers. I'm sorry, I can't do this. And she says, oh, we have the perfect projects for you, blah, blah. I said, I can't do it. I'm not going to find, if there's projects out there, I'm going to find them on my own. And then I just started reaching out to everybody I knew saying, I'm available. This is what I do. If you know of anybody, and I found my own work. I just doubled down on my outreach, but that was because I was caught flat-footed. But when you're just starting out, it's a good way to get some cash flow, subcontracting, while you're building your brand and your reputation and your own network of referrals. And actually, I just recently updated my subcontracting guide. So you can put it in the show notes, but the URL is picanetwork.org/subcontracting. And there's 14 different companies and agencies that you can reach out to about subcontracting.
Lots of nuggets. Lots of nuggets. All right. We talked a little bit about LinkedIn and relationships and, keeping that stuff going. What role does networking play in solopreneur success? And how should professionals approach it differently than in a corporate setting, if you even have to do it differently?
Well, you have to do it.
That's the thing.
I was talking to a friend yesterday who's been in corporate his whole career. He's 61, and he says, this is it. This next year, my employment contract ends next year. I need to position myself now to be a solopreneur after this, because I'm done with this corporate BS. And and I said, well, start setting yourself up as an expert now, right? Start warming up your network and going to conferences and or be more active on LinkedIn or getting your name out there. And he said, those are all the things I hate to do. And I said, well, you're going to have to find a way to make some part of it enjoyable, right? Reconnecting with people is usually the easiest thing. But he says, I hate going to conferences. I haven't done it my whole career. So that is the single biggest difference, is you have to do it. You have to put your name out there. And let me tell you, people might think, oh, well, I can start a blog or I can start a podcast. It takes a lot of time to build momentum and get a following. And you're going to need income during that time. I said earlier, I think I've written 87 blogs or whatever. I've been doing this for 8 years. I've been blogging for 8 years. Okay. Only within the last year have people started to say, I found you through Google search.
Yeah. Takes
I've
time.
been doing search engine optimization and keywords and all of that stuff that you're supposed to do. So it can take a long time to build a reputation.
Biggest thing that I've gotten out of here, and hopefully the listeners and the watchers have gotten out of, is you really got to get out and do the work.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm sure there's some
out there.
I'm sure there's some magic pill for some people out there, but for the majority of us all, you got to get out there and you gotta do the work. Now, understanding what work needs to be done, that's what Liz is helping us out with today. But you got to put yourself out there. You got to run the numbers. You got to figure out what it's going to take for you to survive and or thrive, and not necessarily survive. You want to thrive,
right?
And then just get out there and do it. So this is great advice, right? But you got to have that hustler mentality.
Yes.
Because I used to tell people, well, when I was in the Army, I was responsible for doing certain people's not time cards, but their reimbursable cards. And sometimes, like, I had another job as well, so I'd be doing things, and like a month later, they'd be like, "Hey, where's my reimbursable stuff?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" "Well, I sent that to you." "All right, look, it shouldn't take you a month to come to me and say this, right? Because ultimately, this is what I was trying to teach them. You are more passionate about your money than I am. You know what I mean? So you got to be tapping me on the shoulder like, where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my money? Right? In order for me to do that. Don't expect someone to be as passionate about your money as you are. So there's my little thing. You got to have that hustler mentality. Get out there, put yourself out there. People are going to say no. You know what? But 2 years from now, 1 month from now, they may say yes. The only way they're going to do that is to plant the seed and they even know that you're there, that you exist.
Exactly. So, and, going to the whole theme of the show, hindsight.
Yeah.
You don't want to be, your older self doesn't want to look back and say, I never tried it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was that guy. I was that guy when I was younger because I was super shy and I wouldn't take the shot. I was scared, nervous, whatever the heck it is, right? And you understand, after a while, you start to get it. Like, the worst they can do is say no, and you already have the no by not asking them, right? So increase your odds. Say something. Put yourself out there. So,
agree.
So real simple stuff.
And it's not just extroverts that make good solopreneurs. I know a ton of introverts that are killing it, making good living because they listen more than they talk.
Isn't that amazing? Listen more than they talk.
Yeah, so you don't need to have a big outsized personality. In fact, you might be better off if you don't.
All right, Liz. Hey, look, you built a business while raising your daughter as a single mom in an expensive city. How did you balance those responsibilities? And what advice do you have for others juggling entrepreneurship with family life?
Oh gosh. Well, you said it. You got to put in the work. And there are lots of stories and examples in the book
Okay.
about certain struggles that I had at certain times. I mean, I there would be times that I would be so exhausted, but I promised something to a client by end of day, and the thing when you're self-employed is you must keep your word because that's what leads to repeat business and referrals. You can't say, "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't get to it," or "Something came up with my daughter." I didn't know. If I said I was gonna have something to you, I have it to you. And I would lay
Yeah.
my head down on my desk because I knew if I went even to the sofa, I'd be out for 4 or 5 hours, and I would fall asleep at my desk for an hour and then shake off the sleep and like, "Okay, I just need to rally for another hour and get this thing done." But even going earlier to that, I talk about
Hmm.
in the book something called um, the have a wow meeting, the wow factor. Wow stands for ways of working. So when I would ever start a new project with a client, I'd take him out to lunch or meet for coffee, whatever, and I'd
Hmm.
say, "Okay, there's some things that you need to know about how I run about me and my life and how I work." And I said, "I'm a single mom. So I have custody of my daughter Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then again on the weekend. Uh, and on those days, I turn my phone off between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. because that's my time for my daughter. So I am literally, I'm with her. I need to focus with her and give her my quality attention. And yet then I go back to work. So you'll start getting emails from me at 10, 11, 12, sometimes even later. But this is just how I run my life. And so I don't anticipate you to be responding to me at these hours. But this is how I need to do it." And they're all like, "Oh, that makes total sense. No worries." When I started doing that, when I started turning my phone off, when I picked my daughter up from daycare and put her to bed, the the relationship with my daughter improved dramatically because I wasn't checking my phone. I wasn't trying to multitask. It was just okay, my time with her. And it was amazing how within a week I could see the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see the two sides of the coin and just setting those parameters and those boundaries. One, your clients understand, okay, these are the hours. You got plenty of hours. You can reach me. These are the ones that you shouldn't because I'm not going to respond. And then you also built up that relationship, not only with your clients and your customers, but with your family,
Yes.
and you have those perfect moments. So that's
But you need to tell your client in advance because that's the thing. When you're
that's the thing.
self-employed, you
Yeah.
think, "Oh, I need to be on call. I need to be available all the time." Well,
Yeah.
not if you give them the guidelines up front.
Yeah. I like that. I like it. All right. Looking back, I don't think you gave this to me, so I'm gonna ask it. And if you say, "Well, I told you that 10 minutes ago," what was one of the hardest moments in your solopreneur journey, and how did you push through it?
Oh my gosh. The story is in the book. I call it the bath time meltdown.
Uh
So
huh.
even though I would turn my phone off, right, to give my daughter the quality time, sometimes life piles up on you. So I was on a terrible project. It was super stressful. Everything was going sideways and off the rails with the whole project, not just my piece of it. And I had an elderly aunt that lived nearby that I was sort of responsible for helping to take care of. And I had this, a kid, and who knows what else was going on. And I I I was stressed out, wasn't sleeping, had sort of hit my limit. And I think my daughter was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years old. I think she was closer to 5 actually. And kids pick their battles. And
Yeah.
so she's bath time. I'm like, "Okay, Kate, we need to wash your hair." "No, mom, we're not washing my hair today." I'm like, "Yes, sweetie, we need to wash your hair." "Nope, not no, no, we're not washing my hair." And
I can
and
see it.
she was just, being a kid, pushing your
Being a kid,
boundaries,
yeah. Yeah.
and I just broke down in tears. I fell down. I was kneeling next to the tub, and I just sat down on the floor and started sobbing. I get
Yeah.
I get teary-eyed thinking about it now. And
Yeah.
her eyes got big. She's like, "Mom, what happened? I'm sorry. It's okay. It's okay. You can wash my hair. And I couldn't stop crying. And I said, honey, it's not you. It's just everything. I'm so stressed out, as if a 5-year-old knows what stress is.
Yeah.
And I said, it's fine. I need to change something. This isn't working. I can't keep doing all of this. And she's like, it's okay if you wash my hair now. So you're right. And then when I put it into bed, I said, I'm sorry for that, honey, but there's just a lot going on with work and, with Aunt Marion, and I need to figure it out. And so I put her to bed, and I thought to myself, something needs to change because I'm coming apart at the seams. What is in my hands to change? Because, there's, especially now in today's environment, there's a lot of things that are out of our control, but what's in my hands to change? And I said, I think I need to walk away from this project. Because, right, I couldn't, family is first. So I couldn't really just not take help with Aunt Marion's situation.
Right.
So I said, okay, well, what would be the best way to walk away from this project without leaving the client in the lurch and with leaving my reputation intact? Okay, I need to figure out how to replace myself. So the next day I started reaching out to people who do what I do. And I said, listen, something's come up. I've got this family thing. I need to step away. And I explained this to the client, and I said, I've got a couple people lined up who know how to do what I do, that I recommend. But yes, that was definitely one of the lowest points of my solopreneur journey.
Yeah. So just everything just hits you at once. Wow.
Yes. And it life does that.
And it happens. It happens. Yeah. You fight through, you fight. And then you just don't really see the end of the tunnel, or you don't see the relief that's coming, right? Or whatever. It reminds me, I won't tell my story. Really, I will tell it because it was when I was in basic training and we just kept going up this hill. It was, I wasn't used to this type of physical training or physical effort, right? So we had our rucksacks on and we're going up this mountain, and every turn we got around a turn, I was like, okay, it should start going down, but it always was going up and up and up. And I just, when we finally stopped, I remember I didn't start crying, but I just broke down. The weapon was all in the grass, and Sergeant Major, he came over, he's like, get that weapon out of the, so it was just like, oh my gosh, this sucks. And I don't know if I want to do this. Right.
Right.
But then you get to, you figure it out. And I didn't quit the Army. I kept pushing through, but certain things like I have to quit, not being physical enough. I had to quit having a weaker mentality in those type of things. Right. So there are things you have to look at and you have to change in your, from yours was obviously a different perspective. It was just overwhelming. So you had to reevaluate, like, how do I look at this example right here and make sure that I'm taking care of the customer, the client, I'm taking care of my daughter, but more importantly, I'm taking care of myself.
Right. Because
you know what I'm saying?
If you, especially as a mom, and particularly as a single mom, but any mom will know this, if something is wrong with you, the whole system goes out of whack, right?
Yeah. Just as a woman, let me put it like that. Something wrong there. The whole system is just out of whack. So that's power.
Yes, but one of my favorite mantras to this day that I've had since I've been self-employed, it's an adaptation from a Robert Frost poem, and the phrase is, the only way out is through. Quitting is not an option. So
I give you another story.
How can I push through? Like what can I, how can I get, and there's been lots of moments in starting both of these businesses that I run where it's like, okay, this is it. We're out of cash. This is the end of the line, or whatever the problem is. How can I push through? What do I need to do to just push through this? And
that's it.
And lo and behold, you find it somewhere down deep and you push through.
Oh, mentality. All right. I told you I was a veteran. So many veterans consider self-employment after their service. We have plenty of skills. We learn a lot of different things depending on what your jobs are. And then some of the times we get out and we don't want to do that. We don't want to do it for somebody, right? We've built ourselves up. So from your perspective, what advice would you give to a former service member who wants to start consulting, but has no prior business experience?
There are, let me back up. The number one rule is you can't turn yourself into something that you're not. You have to be authentic. No matter what it is that you're doing or want to be doing when you're self-employed, you can't, it has to be authentic for you. People will sense it if you're trying to fake it, or if you're insincere, or if you're sort of like putting on a good act. It's not, you're not going to be successful. Nobody's going to hire you. But let's say, even if it's something that you haven't particularly done before, you can probably take classes, get a certification in whatever that something is. But the important thing is to look back on what skills and experience, or even what resiliency you've developed in the service, and how can that apply to whatever it is I want to do going forward. And just take out a piece of paper, start writing things down. I learned that I can push through even though my body wants to quit. I've learned that I can do this. I learned how to run a team. I learned how to pay attention to details. I know how to do this. I know whatever it is, just brain dump it all out, because those are the nuggets that you can put together and pull forward into your future career, whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. All right, understand understand who you are, who your gaps are, and how you can close those gaps. I love it. So, Liz, I've asked you a few, excuse me, losing my voice here. I asked you a few questions, but is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to share with the audience?
You're stronger than you think. Everybody, every one of us is stronger than we think. So when we talk about digging deep and pushing through, there are, for everybody that's self-employed. Now through PICA, through the Professional Independent Consultants of America, I coach people, I mentor people. Sometimes I have people come to my office hours and they're like, I don't have a particular question. I just have FUD. The FUD monsters come back and I can't get rid of them. I feel like I'm doing everything. I'm not getting any momentum. And so we talk through it, right? But just because it's called Solopreneurship doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Because now there is an organization like PICA. Now there are hundreds of thousands of people out there who are self-employed, and we get it and we help each other. So you don't have to do it on your own. You're stronger than you think.
I love it. And really quick, what does PICA do? What does PICA do?
So PICA is an educational organization and community that I started 8 years ago because I was getting asked out to coffee a couple times a week and people asking me the same questions about being self-employed. So I said, there's got to be a better way to help more people. So because it's a virtual organization, there's dozens of resources and online classes and all kinds of things available through PICA. And I do office hours and mentorship. I run a private boot camp too. It's called boot camp for a reason, because it's not easy. I kick your butt. But if you're really serious about setting up your business and launching, the boot camp is the way to go. So yes, the URL is PICA-network.org, or independentconsulting.org will take you there too.
I love it.
But more important is the book, because really for less than $20, you can get everything laid out for you, like the 6 keys to success. So so the easiest way to find the book, the title is Succeeding as a Solopreneur, which is stupidly hard to spell. So I created a landing page called 6keys.info. It's not 6keys.com because that's way too expensive, and I'm all about keeping more of what I earn, right? So 6keys.info will get you to the book, and from there you can find out more about me or PICA or whatever.
All right. So you told me about the book. Where can the listeners connect with you and learn more about your work? Yeah.
So I also have a personal webpage, but my name is hard to spell. It's lizsteblay.com, Steblay, but nobody's going to remember that. So just go to 6keys.info, and from there you can click through to lizsteblay.com or to PICA or whatever.
All right. Liz, thank you so much. What an insightful, wonderful conversation. You threw out a lot of nuggets, a lot of strategies, keys, life hacks, career hacks. And then you also have your website, your book that also kind of fortifies or solidifies or gives you that foundation that you're going to need when you're going to go out and be a solopreneur. We covered everything from taking the leap into solopreneurship to building a sustainable, profitable business. We talked a little bit about that on your own terms. We talked a lot about that. Liz's 6 keys to success are a game changer for anyone considering self-employment. And Liz, thank you for sharing your expertise and experiences with me, with us today.
My pleasure. Go for it.
And if you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe to Hindsight the Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite platform. And don't forget to leave a review and share this episode with anyone who's considering the solopreneur path. Don't forget to get the book. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and be more. Thank you, Liz. And I'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure.
Hey, thanks for joining me here on Hindsight the Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. And while I have you here, why don't you take your mouse, go over and click on that subscribe button. No, not right there. Over to the right. Down, right there. Boom. Thank you. Now, thank you for subscribing to Hindsight the Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones.